Okay. Hello, I'm Christina Foster, and I want to welcome everybody to Together Tuesday. This is our first one. It's September 20th, 2022. And we used to be Super Saturday School, but we're changing it to hopefully get more people engaged, calling it Together Tuesday. This is a time for families and youth and adults to get together and have some discussions. We're going to go ahead and talk about why we're here. Okay, Shanisa left. Okay, we're going to talk about why we're here. One of the reasons we're here is to talk about what is it to be, excuse me, to be Black, learn a little bit about our culture. We're going to talk about some words in Swahili. That was some of the things that people wanted to learn more about. The other is we're going to talk about historical figures, both facts, fiction and real life heroes and what they mean to us and how it impacts the legacy. But all of this is to talk about how do we develop our story. If we don't tell our story, then who's going to tell it for us? And are they going to be accurate in that telling? So let's do some introductions. I want to introduce myself. I'm again, Christina Foster. I'm on the education team for Black Mothers Forum. And I'm also the proud parent of
Morgan.
What?
Morgan.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Morgan. Like how old you are, what school and things.
I'm 12 years old. I'm in 7th grade, and I really like to read and write stories.
That's what you're doing. Yeah. What school do you attend?
Achievement Academy.
It's one of the micro schools that Black Mothers Forum developed. And part of the reason we developed it is because we needed a format to protect our children and get them to their purpose. We also have our great person who's my co-team person who's helping me through this. Would you like to tell us about yourself, Miss Jerry?
Hi, I'm Miss Jerry Perkins. I'm the communications coordinator with Black Mothers Forum, and I am passionate about amplifying the voices of our Black mothers, children, family, educators, and communities that we serve. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all and to work with Miss Christina on the curriculum and curriculum delivery for Together Tuesday as we celebrate the heroes and heroines of Black history.
All right. Well, let's dive right into it. And one of the things that I said that people wanted to learn was different words in Swahili, so we can talk about it. So each week we're going to talk about one or two different words that relate to the topic at hand. Jerry, you want to share the screen? Okay. All right. Uh-oh. Yep. The first word is Habari Gani. And during Kwanzaa, which is December 26th through January 1st, and it talks about the principles. It's not a religious, it's a celebration or holiday. It's more of a cultural holiday. But when you greet someone, when you greet someone during that time, you say Habari Gani. And in Swahili, it means what's the news? So when you want to go ahead and do that, Jerry? Can't hear it. You're on mute, so you couldn't hear it.
Okay, let me do that again. I do that every time.
That's okay.
Habari Gani.
What's the news?
Right, Habari Gani. So when you're meeting one of your fellow friends and you want to know what's going on, you say to them, Habari Gani. And the reply is whatever the day is or what's happening. So during Kwanzaa, if it is the day of Kuumba, which is creativity, the response would be Kuumba. So we want to talk about that. So those were some of the things that people said they wanted to learn about. And it's a learning experience. Jerry and I are picking up and learning different words regarding that. But what is it that we want to expect during the Together Tuesday? Initially, when we started out with Super Saturdays, it was focused on the youth. But what we found is that parents and adults wanted to learn more and more about our history and developing and understanding the legacy from when we come and what we're going to be. So one of the things we want to expect is to openly to have an open mind. That is foremost what we want, is to have an open mind, have lively discussions about what's going on. One of the things that we're going to talk about in developing our story is look for things that will help you tell who you are and learn about who you are. So I have a journal. My daughter has her journal. Okay, it's a book, right? She has her journal. She's writing notes in it. You cut things out of magazines that you relate to. Crayons, markers, you know, whatever it is, we've got it over here, right? Crayons, markers, whatever it is that resonates with you to help you create your story. And normally when people think of the story, they think of it as the written word. But we come from an oral tradition, which is talking. But it also can be creative regarding a painting. It could be creating a quilt, because quilts tell stories. So it can be any medium of art that you want to use to tell the story about who you are. Okay, we're going to go to learning about historical figures, and I'm going to have Miss Jerry talk a little bit about Carter G. Woodson.
Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, founded the study and life of African American history in 1950. The second African American to receive a PhD in history from Harvard University, wrote The Miseducation of the Negro. And we will provide the PowerPoint so you all can click the hyperlink and order that on Amazon. It's a great book to educate us, and I actually ordered it, so I look forward to reading it and learning more about that book. Carter G. Woodson, African-American trailblazer and pioneer for our community.
If you want to eat healthy and feel your best, you gotta try cassava. Cassava is the world's.
Woodson is popularly known as the father of Black history.
Adrienne Cannon knows all about Carter G. Woodson. She's the Afro-American History and Culture Specialist for the Manuscript Division of the Library of Congress. The library is the keeper of 18,000 items from Woodson's collection of papers that he started donating back in 1929. Everything from a letter from Paul Laurence Dunbar High School here in Baltimore to a manuscript of a poem by Dunbar, slave bills of sale, and slave freedom papers.
The collecting, research, writing, and publishing he did on the Black past in the early 20th century laid the foundation for the study of African-American history as a legitimate field of inquiry.
Carter G. Woodson was born in 1875 in New Canton, Virginia, to former slaves.
I think that that connection to slavery was the impetus for his interest in recording the Black past.
Woodson worked in the coal mines of West Virginia as a young man, but went on to earn his bachelor's and master's degrees, eventually going to Harvard on an American history scholarship.
He was the only African-American born to former slave parents to receive a PhD in history. And he was the second African-American to receive a PhD in history. From Harvard. The first was W.E.B. Du Bois.
Woodson also served as a teacher, a principal, and a publisher. He wrote The Negro in Our History. He started the publication Journal of Negro History in 1916. And to help teachers with African American studies, he created the Negro History Bulletin. The historian and writer of more than a dozen books lobbied schools and organizations to take part in a special program to encourage the study of Black history.
It was celebrated first as Negro History Week, and it was celebrated the second week in February to encompass the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass.
He chose that week in order to reach Blacks and whites because he believed recording and disseminating Black history could advance race relations.
As he indicated in his textbook, The Negro in Our History, was to celebrate not Negro history, but the Negro in all history, in our history.
Lisa Robinson, WBAL TV 11 News.
Thank you, Ms. Jerry. That was lots of good information. We would also like to take a moment to have Ms. Deborah Colbert-Green introduce herself. Ms. Deborah, what we're doing is we've talked a little bit about, we've introduced ourselves. We talked a little bit about how we are reformatting Super Saturday School to Together Tuesday. And one of the things we're going to have in each of the weeks that we're going to do this is a Swahili word that relates to whatever the topic is we're doing. We're going to talk about a hero, a superhero, either fictional or real. So you just learned, or we just had a little bit about Carter G. Woodson because he was the quote unquote, the father of our history, as we're calling it. So would you like to want to get you caught up and have you introduce yourself?
Why, thank you. Good evening, everybody. And I'm Deb Colbert-Green, Executive Director of the Black Mothers Forum and Micro Schools. And so what we want to do here is make sure that we are exposing our families and mostly our youth to his story or her story. And so thank you, Christina, for leading this effort and kicking off a new season for us with Together Tuesday. And by us having the recording available, we hope that people will go out and check it out and then join us for our next episode. So thank you.
So one, we talked about Carter G. Woodson put together the information about Black history. Our next slide talks about, it's talking about who tells the story, who creates the story.
Oh, there's another video.
Oh, there is? Oh, okay, sorry.
Someone like you, who reunited the family.
Think of the worst things people can say about your culture, about your race, about your religion, about your people. Are they true? Could it be that you're not as smart, or you're money hungry, or you're a drunk, or you're cold and calculating? Of course not. You're an individual. Chances are your culture has made contributions in a masterful way to cultures throughout the world. But the more the bigots say it, the more it seems true. The more these stereotypes are hoisted upon the cultural landscape, the more people look at Blacks and Jews, Muslims, Catholics, Native Americans, Asians, and Hispanics with wary eyes, wondering if the demonizing insults are true. How in the world can you believe in yourself if those around you believe you're a lesser life form? Dr. Carter G. Woodson had an answer for that. That answer is knowledge.
What, you may ask, is so important about studying history? The answer is as simple as it is important. If you knew your culture's history was directly linked to great writers, powerful leaders, successful business people, and pioneers, Wouldn't that make you proud? Wouldn't that inspire you to do great things yourself? Those who endeavor to understand their own history are paving a path toward a bright future. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, knew that knowledge of the African-American experience would be the last way to destroy the chains of slavery. And so he made it his life's passion. In early 20th century America, it was popularly accepted that Blacks in Africa had contributed nothing to world civilization, that slavery actually benefited those Africans who had the good fortune to be caught up in the slave trades.
It was damaging African Americans because they too were being exposed to these ideas and accepted them as truth. And it had a damaging effect on their self-esteem and their belief in their themselves to be able to go on and educate and contribute to the world.
Those kinds of distortions not only permeated the world of white Americans, but sunk deeply into the souls of African Americans. If one was to believe these lies about his own people, then how could he achieve the confidence to break the mold? In 19 books and dozens of published articles, Carter G. Woodson worked to erase that false history and began to help all Americans of all cultures to understand the true history of the African people's experience in America and across the world.
When you think of Black people as inferior, it would only make sense, this argument that they had done nothing to contribute to the world. So he's going to point out all of those fallacies and really try to give the Black community a rallying point around which to push their efforts, that we really needed to do something to make people aware, not just Black people, but white people, about all of the contributions that people of African descent, both on the continent of Africa and also in this country, have made to the world and to the United States of America.
He believed that hard facts through research and fair-mindedness would bring balance to history, and that his thesis was that all peoples in the world had made a contribution to civilization. And once that people on a mass scale understood this, there would be greater respect for all races, all ethnic groups, all religions.
Before Carter Woodson began publishing his own writings and those of contemporary historians, there were few media outlets that would shed light on the full story of African and African-American achievements in the United States. He made sure Americans heard a different side of the story. In 1926, Woodson founded Negro History Week, which later evolved into Black History Month. To this day, the occasion continues to remind all Americans of the great accomplishments of writers, entrepreneurs, civil rights leaders, artists, and educators who helped create modern America. Woodson also founded what is now called the Study of African-American Life and History, founded in 1915. This is the agency that decides on the theme for Black History Month each year. This legacy is still helping to inspire new generations of young people with true stories of outstanding achievements by Americans of African descent.
No person can imagine where he's going unless he knows where he's been.
The more I learn as I've continued to educate myself and to study about people like James Lafayette, like Anthony Johnson, like Maggie Walker, it's an absolute inspiration to me, because not only did they look like me, but because here you have an individual with enough character, enough strength, enough skill, that living in some very difficult times, they were able to use what they had, no excuses, no pity parties, but use what they had to advance their cause and take not only themselves, but other people to another level.
Across our country today, African Americans have overcome terrible lies and stereotypes to achieve great success. Carter Woodson inspired each of these people to understand the success that has been achieved by pioneers of their culture and the contributions they have made and are now making to our nation.
Oh, I love that one, Jerry. That was a very good one. It goes definitely with what we're getting ready to talk about is the story. Any comments, Morgan or Jerry or Ms. Deb?
One comment I will make is Carter G. Woodson Library was in my community and in Chicago. So on the south side of Chicago, it was a beautiful library at the time. And I spent a lot of time in there. Morgan, you know anything about the Dewey Decimal System?
Kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, that's what we had to use back then in that library. And now it's high tech, right? So I think Carter G. Woodson had an influential place in a lot of our lives if we stop and think about it for a moment. So very important, I think, for us to understand why he fought for this moment for us to be recognized. But I also want to make it clear that Black Mothers Forum, we want to celebrate Black History 365. And that's been our model for the last 6 years. And so we want to make sure that that's what we're doing.
Amen. I like that. Jerry, did you have any comments as you were gathering this together and getting the research? Any thoughts on it that stuck out to you?
Well, Carter G. Woodson was a remarkable man. He paved the way for myself, my people, my family, my community. I'm just so thankful to have historical figures like Mr. Woodson because of his work, you know, our organization exists. Because of his work, we are able to reach higher heights. And, you know, as Miss Deb or as the video mentioned, despite the challenges, you know, Carter G. Woodson and historical figures like himself did not let those challenges become barriers. And I feel like that lets us know today as young people that no matter what we go through, how significant it may be and the impact it may have on our lives, that we too have that resilient spirit that our ancestors instilled in us, and Carter G. Woodson that he had, that we too can overcome any challenges and not let them be barriers and achieve our goals and milestones. So I really enjoyed being able to gather this information in a resource format. So this is, if you click the links through the PowerPoint, you can see Mr. Woodson's biography and go back and watch his videos to learn more and celebrate his achievements. Like Ms. Deb said, 365 days a year.
And if you don't have a copy of The Miseducation of the Negro in your library is lacking. So
Yes.
everybody must have a copy of The Miseducation of the Negro. It is quite a read. Yes.
Yep,
absolutely.
I have our copy too. I have our copy.
So do I. I'm traveling now, but yes, you must have it.
It reminds me, I go back and reread it every few years. So it's like, okay, I need to go back and make sure I keep it updated.
Exactly.
But he did talk about our story and making sure that we have it documented. So let's go to the next slide, Jerry. And it's The Lion and the Hunter, the story. You know, when you think of the story about the lion and the hunter, and it's always about the hunter is the one who's the hero in the story, right? And if we think about it from the slave trade, it's the whites who are coming, and it even said it in the video, who were coming to save the Blacks. When they came over here to America, they were saving the quote unquote savage Native Americans, right? So it's who is the hero, who tells the story, and in the fight, who's the winner, who's the loser? Who started the fight? These are the questions that we need to start asking. Who started the fight? Why are they fighting anyway? What did the hunter do, you know, to start the fight? What did the lion do? Was the lion just reacting to the hunter coming after them, right? So we want to look at, when you're reading a story, whatever the story is, look at it from a different perspective. Make sure you understand the author and what's their motive, right? So when we're creating our story, and that's something we're getting ready to work on during this time, is what is it that we want people to know about us, right? Can you go to the next one real quick? The lion into hunter. I am not going to say that Swahili sentence, but basically it's loosely translated to be, until the lion has his or her own storyteller, the hunter will always have the best part of the story. Okay. Morgan, can you read this for me, please?
The proverb above Iwi
Is in Iwi.
a language mostly spoken in Ghana. It exists in different forms in many parts of Africa. Variations in other African languages are, until lions have their own historians, tales of the hunt shall always glorify the hunter. And until lions start writing their own stories, the hunter will always be the heroes. Despite its different roots, its underlying the meaning is the same. The content of the story and the way it's told depends on the perspective and the experience of the storyteller.
That's right. So when we're thinking of the stories, and when you're writing your story, you want to be the one to have the voice for yourself. You don't want somebody else to have your voice. In history, we, quote unquote, the global we, have had our voices taken away from us, and we have not been the ones who have taken charge of telling our own stories. As one of the reasons Black Mothers Forum has started the micro schools and doing the work that we do, is to make sure that the voice and our voices aren't getting lost, and we're telling our story. Want to go to the next slide? Oh wait, sorry. Miss Deb or Miss Jerry, you want to have a comment on this? Miss Deb?
So one of the things that I think is important in a narrative of a story is to take the time to sit down and write it down. I think a lot of times we don't spend enough time learning what the story is. And I'm very, very grateful to have understood a part of my family's story, but there's still so much left, even though we know a lot. So I think that it is important to understand your story from your perspective. Sit down, interview your parents, record them, videotape them, and get the information about your family. Because I noticed here several parts of Africa are mentioned. And what I learned about my family is that we would have taken the Nigerian interpretation of the lion and the hunter, who is the hero.
Okay. Ms. Morgan, do you have any thoughts about who's telling the story?
Well, it depends. It depends.
What do you mean?
Because, well, the hunter is probably the one telling the story because the hunter always wants to be the winner. But
Okay.
parts of it, the lions too.
What part is the lion tell? If the lion was to tell their part of the story, what would the lions, what do you think the lion would be saying?
The lion would be saying, I was minding my own business, walking around the forest, and someone decided I was going to be their dinner.
Love it. And you're absolutely right, Morgan. And the funny part too, you made me think about the fact that the hunter always has to have a weapon, don't they? The lion has its natural instincts to fight.
Yeah. Very good. Jerry, do you have any comments on the philosophy of the lion and the hunter story?
Not too much the philosophy per se, but I would just say that I think that it's important for us to be able to tell our story and not, his story, history. Like, it's important for us to have our story. So I think just keeping that in mind, like through our oral histories within our family, that they are true, and that it's important to pass those stories along so that we're educated on the truth, and that we don't, fall into the narrative of those who seek to distort history so they don't have to take accountability for the harm that they've done and the generational and historical trauma that it has impacted our community, the Native Indigenous community, Hispanic, Latinx community, and Asian Pacific Islander community.
So there's a new movie out, and I know Morgan and I have seen it, and I know Jerry has. Have you seen? Yes. You want to click on the next thing, The Woman King. And I don't know if you guys have been hearing the backlash and about people are saying to boycott it because it's not an accurate depiction of history. And they need to make sure that we're aware that Blacks actively participated in the selling of other Africans. Well, they do mention that in The Woman King. But it's interesting how people were upset, but they weren't upset to the extent when Elizabeth Taylor played Cleopatra. They just said that was creative license. And when Johnny Depp played quote unquote Tonto, and so, the Native American person. So, different people have portrayed others, but here's a situation where we're trying to tell our part of our perspective of this story. So I kind of want to know, what's your thoughts since we've seen it? Morgan, tell me a little bit about what you thought of when you saw Woman King. What resonated with you? How did you feel watching that? What did it make you think of?
Just like how it's telling the true parts of history, and that some people growing up, they just knew that Black people were slaves, but Black people were also in tribes and groups, and girls were really strong too.
Sorry, girl power, girl power. I don't know about you guys, but I was like fighting in the movie. I was like, oh, in the seats, I was into it, right? But it showed from, there was some good in it, there was some bad, but it took a little bit of definitely creative license in the telling of it, but it provided a different perspective that America in particular, the world had not seen. And it told it from that perspective.
I think, what scares me about a lot of the feedback about the movie is that it demonstrates that the respect for women, and especially Black women, we really got to work hard to make sure that the story gets out there from our perspective.
Yeah. Jerry, what are your thoughts on that? I'm sorry, Ms. Deb, go ahead.
I was going to say, I thought it was great creative license. I mean, I didn't see as much fallout from the Black Panther as I have seen from the Woman King.
Yeah. And, it was, what I liked about it for myself is it showed a woman reclaiming her voice. And we as a society, and we as a gender in particular, we've lost our voice on so many occasions. We've let others take our voice and we don't create the story. And she made a decision. I'm going to take my voice back. And that's what we as a people need to do, because right now with people in educational situations, teachers, administrators are not allowing truth to be told, and they're trying to muzzle our voices. But we've got to find ways to consistently speak truth and consistently tell our children that we did not come from what? Say it loud.
Slavery.
Thank you, slavery. We are the original what? People.
Kings and queens.
Yes. Now, it's so funny because granted, not everybody in that movie was the king or king, king and queens. You had the people who were doing the working, and
That's right.
there was still the hierarchy of society. That's what has always happened. But we also, not everybody was enslaved during that time, right? They were warriors, they were fighters, and they were able to speak their truth.
Well, I think it's fascinating too that everybody was able to identify their talent. You think about what people are capable of doing. If you're a warrior, that's a different spirit than if you are someone that can build something or fix something. But what I saw was leadership. And I think that is the other thing that's important in that movie.
And yeah, I liked the king too. He listened to the different perspectives, some of the decisions, he tried to make it for the benefit of all, or so he thought. But we all tend to do that, whether it's the best answer or not, right? But and then the other thing that I thought was fascinating was a reminder that a lot of the people who were captured and were supposed to be brought over chose to not be enslaved. They chose to kill themselves. And that's what the one lady said, you know what, I'm just going to kill myself because I'm not going to go out like that. So it makes you wonder where you would have been during that situation,
That it's a deflection. I feel like them and their feedback is a deflection. Like history is history. We're trying to tell our story and change the narrative and create our own narrative. And the reality is people don't want to see Black women in a strong leadership role where we're demonstrating our intellectual capabilities. I mean, these women were fierce. Like these women, phenomenal Black women. The world doesn't want to see that because it's a threat to white supremacy. So they want to deflect and try to distort the truth, distort history, instead of acknowledging how his story set the stage for even the engagement within our Black community today. Like the division, the divisiveness, self-preservation, survival of the fittest, literally putting our Black African ancestors against each other and having them to choose. Like Harriet Tubman said, I'd rather be free or die. Like they set the stage for the divisiveness that we have in our community. And again, how can we celebrate a movie like Woman King when the harm has not been acknowledged? So yes, this is a win for our people. This is a win for us. We love to see Viola Davis as a dark-skinned sister in this role, showing her talent, and all the other sisters in the cast finally getting the recognition that they deserve. But people don't want to see, they don't want to celebrate Blackness. They don't want to celebrate what Black femininity is, which is what that movie portrayed, because they want to distort history in the narrative. And until white America acknowledges that, they will not celebrate the Woman King. It's their problem. You know what I'm saying? We are not the problem. Oh.
We got Miss Jerry on her soapbox. But I
know, right?
I know.
Power to the people. And it's reminds me also of some of the things that we're required to do, especially for our kids and for our youth, is to demonstrate the importance of self-respect and understanding how important it is to love ourselves enough to feel that we're worthy to be the king, whether it's the woman king or the man king.
Yeah. So that goes to the next story, the next slide. One of the things that is the reason for this Tuesday, Together Tuesday, and part of Black Mothers Forum and creating our micro schools and all of the pillars. And what we do is we want to get people talking about our history, because if we don't tell it, it's doomed to be lost. That's one of the reasons Carter G. Woodson was so adamant and so passionate about making sure we have the history, whether it be oral, written, in a quilt, in a painting, whatever medium it is. We've got to learn to talk and tell the truth of the story, so it's not lost, and so it's not distorted, and so this generation knows from whence they've come. So who's telling the story? So this week, as you're going about this week before the next one, we want you to talk about what are things that you want people to know about you, okay? And you can do it such as if you find something that resonates with you in a magazine, it's like, wow, this is me. Or if you saw a news clipping, or there's a poem that you want that resonates with you. If somebody says, you know what, you remind me of Viola Davis, okay, a warrior, woman king, whatever it is, take your journal, right? In any format, write it down, cut out the article, start keeping that information so you can start compiling it to help create your story about yourself. Because we're going to go through this journey. Think about, what are you passionate about? What do you want people to know about you? So Morgan, give me 2 things you want people to know about you.
That I can do it. We can do anything if we put our mind to it.
Okay.
And that you can be powerful no matter what or who you are.
Okay, that you can be powerful. What if somebody said, that's not true? You can't do that. You can't do anything.
That's your opinion and I have mine.
Okay, that's right. Tell them that's their opinion, but you know you. And it's about learning about what you're worth, what's your legacy. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit more in the next coming weeks about legacy and what that means, and what's your role in your legacy, and what's the role in your family's legacy to how you are today and who you are. Okay. So Miss Jerry, what are some things that you want people to know about you, to get other people's brains thinking and jotting it down? You can take us off the screen if you want.
Okay. Well, I mean, I always say God and my ancestors are within me. I will not fail. And I mean, I'm just appreciative for the people who've come before me, my ancestors, my family, my parents. I know they paved the way for me. You ladies here, I mean, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. It is because of them we can. Like, I definitely feel that resiliency as a protective factor. Like, the ancestors are with me, like guiding me, protecting me. I feel their spirit upon me and connected to them, even though that was so long ago, because I see what they went through manifesting in different ways as myself and my colleagues, and even the old guard, the new guard, as we navigate these systems and institutions and continue to break these barriers and not let challenges, So I mean, it's powerful. Like, I mean, I wouldn't want to be anything other than Black. So, and a woman. So, I mean, I just love
God made you just what he wanted you to be.
I know, and it's a blessing to just have this space for the children to learn our story, not his story, and to change the narrative. It's empowering.
One of the things that I always try to do is, when I leave a legacy, I want it to be a positive impact, right? So whatever I do, I want to change it and make it better, don't make it worse, right? So whatever you do, you want to make a positive impact. And that's what I want people to start thinking about for their story, what positive impact are they leaving? Girl, why are you like going in and out? Like, yeah, just sit still. Like she's fading in and out. All right, Ms. Deb, how about you?
Well, I've been involved in the civil rights fight now for over 50 years, and I'm still passionate about it. And if I could have dinner with one person in my life, it would have been my great grandfather. And so I wonder how he did what he did coming up in the 1800s and moving through so many different experiences as a man in Mississippi. And I love to learn. And I think it's very important to keep a passion and a fire within to always want to learn something. And it doesn't matter how old the person is that you learn from, as long as you're willing to embrace it. But I think we also have to realize that something has happened in the village today. And what I mean by that is that our young people have to reach back for Sankofa, right? Go grab it. They got to go get some more history. They got to sit down and respect where we as elders have been. And so very important, I think, for us to try to impact our youth in a way that we've never thought we would have to, because of what's happening in our education system, not teaching history. It is our responsibility as families to make sure, and as the Black Mothers Farm, to make sure that we are sharing history and getting people to think about their own history. And so I'm passionate about excellence in education.
Growing up, my mother was a part of the Black Panthers in Detroit. And once a week, we had to learn about different people growing up, who impacted Black history. And we learned early that, like I keep trying to tell Morgan, Blacks did not start off at slavery. That's in the middle of our story. That's actually probably to the later part of our story, right? We helped develop civilizations. Everybody came through a Black woman. Every person in this world has come through a Black woman. And so, we need to keep teaching our youth that they somehow or another have lost the self-esteem, the self-worth, the self-value. They don't value human life. And it's not just Blacks right now. It seems to be permeating through this generation, the human value, valuing human life is right? So how do we get them to know? Part of it is to teach them from whence they've come, so that they can see where they can go. So any closing remarks? If not, we're going to stop the recording.
I just want to say that I think it's important for us, for the old guard and the new guard, to validate each other's thoughts, feelings, emotions, and experiences. For the new guard to have a level of respect, and for the old guard for paving the way and sacrificing so that we could have access to the opportunities that we have, and for us also to understand to whom much is given, much is expected. And we have a social responsibility to our communities to answer, the call to Black leadership, even though we shouldn't have to have that burden of Black fatigue and take that on. This is a part of our DNA. We're not going to progress as a people if we don't heal. So how do we bridge the gap between the old guard and the new guard and have a level of respect so that we can move forward as a people? Because until we do that, I feel like our Black community is going to continue to be divisive and not have unity.
Jared, part of that is having these discussions to tell the stories, tell each other stories, and having a listening ear to the other stories. Like you said, not disregard the other person's story, value and validate that other person's story.
Connectivity. It's about, I think, being able to connect rather than to divide, and realize that when I hear the narrative that, you know, slavery happened back then and people denouncing or deflecting, it wasn't my fault, or I don't care about that, that's a problem. And I really think we need to do a better job of understanding where we've been. And as the clip said earlier, look, if you don't know where you've been, you might have some trouble figuring out where you're going to go.
Well, thank you. We're going to go ahead and stop the recording. Say good night, everybody.